Welcome back to Weedy TV. In this episode, we're going to talk about how to find good spots. It's one of the most common asked questions is people asking, do you have any secret spots you can share, or where can I find certain fish? The great news is there really is no secret spots anymore. With the technology you have on hand and the ability and the knowledge you can find on the internet. The key part of it is knowing when to dive these locations. So we'll talk about key aspects and key signs, what we're looking for when we're diving certain spots. We start the day diving some really nice shallow reef on the sand. This is really nice country with lots of the right bait fish like goatfish, small snapper and small trevally. At this time of year, you get lots of trevally coming into shallow and deep weed edges. These are one of my favourite eating fish. I pick up a couple of kinner to break up to see if I can attract more in. In this sort of territory, I want to keep myself pretty close to the reef. You can be quite a daunting prospect if you stay out in the open in shallow water. A great start of the day, picking up two nice trevally. Your shallow coastal water is likely to be the most productive closer to high tide, either the end of the incoming or the start of the outgoing. This is the best time to head in shallow on the coast. Next up, some snapper. We grabbed a pile of kinner and broke them up over this rock here. This was two good prominent rocks sitting out on the sand, making for good cover for us to sneak over and also a nice spot for bait fish to hang around. Snapper will be furiously hungry over the next few months as they feed up to spawn in the warmer water. Sophie lands an absolutely perfect kill shot. Her first dive after losing the tip of her index finger on her shooting hand, so it takes a little bit of getting used to pulling the trigger again. A perfect eating size snapper. A lot of the time people say they've dived an area and there was no fish. But unfortunately in New Zealand and lots of places in the world, fish don't just pile up in spots. It's very dependent on current, time of year, moon phase, time of the day, all sorts of factors come into play. And the more you learn about this sort of stuff, the more chance you have of being successful. With this good visibility in shallow, it's time to head out deeper. We're getting close proximity to high tide. So in this deeper water on this weed edge, hopefully I'm going to catch a little bit of current and have found this nice bit of reef sitting out on the sand. I take my time to analyze the bottom on the way down, as this time of year is a very good time to find boarfish. They do a great job at camouflaging themselves on the reef, as I still haven't noticed this boarfish off to my left. Notice the fish is facing into the current. I'm a little cautious here as I didn't see the flopper open. So want to make sure I engage that flopper before going to the surface. These giant boarfish are such beautiful fish. Diving deeper territory, I take my time between my dives to meet my surface interval. Check out in this next clip how it's so important where you land on the bottom. With a lot of the time diving New Zealand, the water is quite murky. So if you land 5 meters to the wrong side on the bottom, the fish won't find you and they won't come in. So it's so important to check out the bottom as you go down and figure out the best location for you to lie. Sometimes that might be out on the sand, sometimes that might be up on the reef. Check this dive and you'll see that I position myself out on the sand. Often on my first dives, I'll dive on top of the reef, higher on the water column, just to analyze what's going on and not to spook the fish on the bottom. After spearing that boarfish, I might dive out on the sand to make myself a little bit more open and see if I can attract some fish in. This nice trevally appears out of nowhere. On the way up, I circle around, just checking out all the reef, checking out the territory, so I can map out the bottom for my next dive. Back on the surface, I make sure to orientate myself into the current and try and hold on to the spot where I am. Although I'm dealing with a fish, it's important to multitask to keep you on the same spot. I can't quite see the bottom, so I need to make sure I don't drift away too fast. It's so important once you find a good spot to stay there. Of course, it doesn't take long for this nice school of kingfish to make an appearance. Lots of variables are coming together on the spot. There's the right sort of bait fish, we've got the right amount of current, and in turn I'm going to see lots of different species in this one spot. If the current was going the other way, there would be no fish in this spot. This was only a quick morning dive, so it was time to head home, but I was absolutely buzzing from some great diving. There is no excuse now to not be able to find good locations to go spearfishing. You can check out lots of the new technology. We've got one of the new Lowrance sounders, and it's got the relief shading on the charts. So say for example here, I can zoom right in here, and I can see so much of the reef and the country. I can see exactly how it flows, how it moves, any small bump on the seabed. It means that I'm able to explore and get myself to the optimum point that's going to be catching current and most likely to have species. Only a few days later, I head out with a couple of mates that have come over from Tahiti. They're normally used to very warm, clear water. It's a great correlation compared to the previous trip, as it takes us a little bit longer to get onto the fish, even though we're diving very similar sort of country. But it could be simple things like different moon phase, different point in the tide cycle. First up again, another nice trevally. Although there's a few fish, it doesn't really have a great feeling to it. Most of the little fish down there are small snapper, which aren't always a great indication for a fishy spot. This is not a bad looking spot. Some good verticality, a nice run of current coming over the top of the rock. I spot a nice kingfish in the distance, so we must be getting closer. You'll notice on a lot of these dives, I don't just pin my head and race to the bottom to try and maximize my bottom time. You'll notice you'll have a lot more success if you take your time on the way to the bottom and analyze where you're going to land before getting there. Blue moki in the upper North Island like to occupy the most prime territory. Some more good signals. Notice these demoiselles are higher up in the water column. There's slightly bigger congregations of them, and even that silver drummer. Drummer are a very important sign if you're diving out in deeper water. They associate themselves with caves, holes, boulders, all key territory you're looking for in deep water. Lots of other fish will hang out in these areas. Next dive, jackpot. I spot this nice boarfish tucked in between these two bits of reef. Once I spot this nice school of boarfish, I hug the bottom to keep a low, calm profile. After a couple of dives, I leave them alone just to explore a bit more and see what other fish might be about, or if there's even bigger boarfish. More boarfish. And as mentioned previously in the video, I do like to land on the reef before the sand if I'm diving a new spot. I don't want to get too close to these fish, as I want Gianni to try and have a go at getting one.
Gianni makes his dive to bottom. He takes his time to make sure he lands in the right spot. I can't quite get there with him as I've got the short float line, but he nails the biggest one. An awesome fish to spear in New Zealand. Before the tide changes, I want to get down and try and get one of these kingfish for us all to share on the boat. Rather than just chase this fish, I try and make it inquisitive and intercept it. My Weddy Reef Pro does the rest of the job. A perfect kill shot, which is exactly what you want these days in New Zealand waters, with bronze whaler sharks being so prevalent.
It's a good eating size, that.
Now it's Frank's turn. We head back to where that school of boarfish was earlier, and he makes a dive. Another example of the importance of looking around on the way down, as these two boarfish are parked up quietly. He heads off after a few that spook, but I eventually get his attention.
It did not get away. I thought it was just for them.
Yeah.
So I had a little watch behind
Yeah.
and see them.
Trying to swim up the wall.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Nice one.
That's a female.
Yeah, female, yeah.
But I missed the kill shot. Once more, just too high.
Yeah, too high, yeah.
Yeah, great fish.
Yeah, nice.
Another one.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It always pays to look behind you. And talk about a bad time for the GoPro to go flat. Once we had a boarfish each and a kingfish, we had more than enough fish to feed the whole crew. So I went back down with just the GoPro. Such an exciting sight to see. Boarfish can be one of the more tricky species to find in New Zealand, but once found, it can be very easy to spear. It really emphasises the importance of aligning the right spot with good conditions, right time of year, and you may very well find some great success like this.